Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6 says, my people, God speaking through his prophet, said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. He said, because you've rejected knowledge, I'll reject you. How sobering is that? Hi, my name is Charles Vance. I'm along with Chief Strategist Terry Sacka today here on the Wealth Transfer. Terry, good to see you.
Hi, Charles. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Wealth Transfer. Today we are going to talk about the Bank of International Settlements. What that really means is that's the central bank of the central bank. And what is a central bank? The central bank is our Federal Reserve, and it is the actual banking system that controls the monies for every country. So the Europeans have a European central bank, and the Bank of England is their central bank. Ours is the Federal Reserve.
Federal Reserve is not owned and operated by the United States government.
No.
Most people think it is because it's got the word federal in it, which is kind of sneaky little idea.
Yeah, actually the central banks, especially our Federal Reserve, is a private institution. Now, yes, they say Congress has oversight and control, but I think it was let's just say, very large family once said, I don't care who makes the laws, just allow me to control the money. And that's kind of paraphrasing.
All it takes, isn't it?
Yeah, and so the central banks are in control, and they kind of dictate to the world. That's why everyone hangs on the balance of the central bank statements, and most of those obviously are half true to what I would call shifting to attention. So if they're saying go over here, they're doing something over there. So we have to be very cautious.
Now, right before the program started, I told you a little story. It happened to me back when I was in the construction business. I think it's relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. I owned a construction company for over 20 years and walked into one of the major lumber supply houses one day and was at the counter, and the clerk and I just began to talk, and I said, you know, one of the major problems in the world today is ignorance. And there was a gentleman standing next to me that was older than me at the time, actually spoke up and said, that is not the problem. The problem in the world is people don't know anything. And I had to just smile inside and say, you know what, you're right. Obviously, you're well aware that the word ignorant means the lack of knowledge, but there's a lot of folks that are extremely ignorant concerning the banking system and what's going on in it.
Yeah, and as Christians and we the body, I think that's what the Wealth Transfer, what you and I have a passion for, is helping people understand. Let's get back to the root of what God told us to do in the Bible, how to use our faith in understanding of what He said to live by, and then know what information is true, not true. Systems of the world being controlled by Satan, influenced by Satan. God said not to be reliant on the wisdom of the world, but the wisdom of the Spirit. And so we do know it's very, very important that we try to get our information and just get straight information so we can make objective decisions on our future. Because remember, it's we the people, and we as the Christian body. And I don't care how they're trying to divide things up right now. Remember, Satan has come to steal, kill, and destroy through division. We've got Christians divided amongst each other. And when we should all be loving each other, regardless if we have separate belief systems to some extent in the kingdom, we should still be loving on one another because we're still within the body of Christ. So we have to be very cautious because you're right. The Bible says those will perish for a lack of knowledge.
So it's ignorance that's going to destroy us. And many times people are willfully ignorant because things are going okay for them.
I know you said that before. As long as there's food on the table, we can go to the movies and things, it's okay. But what you don't understand is inflation is destroying your purchasing power. $4 gasoline, food cost, everything more expensive. And you don't understand that that's incremental looting of your savings. It's not that things became more expensive. The paper money system has lost tremendous value. I contend the dollar is going to lose significant value in the future by design. Are you prepared in your retirement accounts, all the money you saved, not just for the luxury of your retirement, but inheritance to your children or your children's children? Are you prepared properly, or more importantly, are you diversified properly?
Now, diversified means?
Means basically don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Okay.
Meaning you should have a little bit of here, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, because when the system, like they did in 2008, collapsed, How many people's retirement accounts lost tremendous value?
Oh, I had all kinds of people tell me they lost nearly everything they had.
Yeah, I tell people, I had 500,000, now I'm worth 150,000.
Right.
Well, at the same time, those that own silver, if out of that 500,000, if you would have had 100,000 in silver, that silver was worth, and it is even today at that point, worth 300,000. So, as the paper money system and the stock market system collapsed, silver and gold skyrocketed. Yeah, granted, they sell off these prices. They go up and down and around. This is not short term. This is a hard asset that you own for the long term, and why it's so important in your retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, and stuff, to be protected. You could roll over your IRA into a precious metals IRA, own hard physical asset like silver, gold, platinums, and palladiums and such. In the vaults controlled by the custodians, it's still a retirement account. Very simple transaction, but instead of being in the systems of the world, bonds, papers, and stocks, you will own the hard asset. Over time, with everything we're sharing with you, this asset's going to be more valuable, and you just don't care short term, but in the next foreseeable future, you're going to see unbelievable changes in the price.
And Terry, you talked about that precious metals being in vaults. It's not in vaults that the bank controls.
That's exactly
right. It's in
right.
third-party vaults where there's actually a verification.
Oh, there's verification, all right. It's very important.
Matter
of fact, it's extremely controlled. The custodians that control IRA accounts and precious metals is very controlled by the government in rules and regulations. So yes, it's safe. It's not in the banking system, nor is it part of the system.
Now, some people might ask the question, well, if people walked into Greece, the government walked in and just took people's money out of the bank.
Out of the bank, absolutely.
Why wouldn't they take it out of one of these vaults? Why wouldn't they step in?
Well, it's not a bank vault. And so, as a matter of fact, we do have in the United States, by the way, they did that in Greece, but we have in our laws, as well as the laws of Canada, Switzerland, and Europe, they've all changed them, where if a bank fails again, first the shareholders of the bank are going to forfeit all their shares and money. And by the way, you in your retirement accounts and mutual funds have banks and shares, so you would also lose significant value in your retirement account. As well as next would be the depositors. So if you have money in the bank in Greece, they took a percentage of the actual depositors' money as a one-time tax to help pay down the debt of Greece. And everyone says, oh, we're not Greece. All right, we actually are in more debt right now than Greece was in that phase. And I'm saying with baby boomers retiring 10,000 every day, coming off of taxes, going on to liabilities, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. And as I shared with you, Social Security right now is in a $130 trillion deficit. Where do you think we're getting that money? So there's going to be a rubber band snap give somewhere.
Nobody can understand how much money that is. $123 trillion. I mean, the government's in, what, $17 trillion worth of debt?
Right.
And that's inconceivable to the average human being.
Well, you know what? Just as they've made trillions not a big deal anymore, and most people don't even stop to think about it, it's no different than now $4 gas is not a big deal when it used to be just $1 not too long ago. Because it's slowly psychologically imprinted on you by the deception of the world that's controlled by the enemy. And we need to understand as the Christian body and we the people of the United States, if we're going to have sovereignty, if we're going to have freedom, and if we're going to be able to worship the God that we want to worship and love on our families and our neighbors like we did in the day, and I'm not counting wacky religious stuff, I'm counting genuine love on one another, hope in Christ, you better have proper protection of your assets or you won't have anything to do anything with. And you're going to be part of the slave of the system, which is Babylon, which we are a Babylon society already, which Babylon means a government without God. And it's very apparent we're a government without God right now. No matter what they say, that even the devil goes to church. So, be quite cautious of that.
Well, so this week we want to specifically hit on a couple of things that should be eye-openers for people. Tell me what those things are that we're going to go to today.
Well, number one, what we're talking about is what it directly does impact your retirement accounts, your savings, the inheritance for your children, your children's children. You need to be protected and diversified and preserved away from that because what's coming is real. And what happened in 2008 is just the beginning, and you've got to be prepared for this. Now, we're talking about today that there's something known as the Bank of International Settlements. Now, what does that really mean? And this has been really big in Europe because for those that are aware, Europe went through almost a near collapse, which I contend it still will. Matter of fact, Portugal, the country of Portugal, is on the verge of collapse. Why? These countries sold more bonds, which are IOUs, into the market system, which, by the way, the shadow banking system is investing in. So you see how this is kind of all spinning underneath the table. And then these bonds, they sold so many bonds, they can't even pay the interest on the bonds, let alone pay back the debt. So if I say, hey, Charles, loan me $10 million, but I probably can only repay you $500, are you going to be happy?
Well, that's obviously not going to work for me.
That's what's going on in the world today. And Portugal is on the verge of collapse. And don't think for a second Spain, Italy, and Greece, and Ireland and others are not. But we, as a United States, actually gave $1.2 trillion in January to help shore up the Italian and Spanish banks.
How do we do that? We didn't have it.
The Federal Reserve just, what they do is they technically loan them $1 trillion, but you got to pay it back. But they never will pay it back, by the way.
Was it the Federal Reserve that did that? The
Yeah,
Federal
well, yeah, of
Reserve
course.
Banking, it was
Yeah.
the banking system that
Yes.
did it. It wasn't the government.
No, it was the banking system.
Okay.
I'm sorry, yes, it was the
Okay.
banking system. And, you know, it says, oh, we're going to loan you $1 trillion to prop up your banks, but they're never getting it back. You know, they say they're going to. Who are you kidding? No,
Well, after
they're just not going
after
to.
you get out so far with that.
That's exactly
and-
what
and,
this is about.
You know,
You can only stretch a rubber band so far, right, before it snaps?
well, and you can only pay so much interest with the money that you borrow. I
Right.
mean, a lot of times people borrow money, and I've seen this happen in the construction world, that people borrow money and take part of that borrowed money to pay the payment with.
Absolutely.
And they keep paying the payment with the borrowed money. Well, you run out of it after a while, you got to go back to the bank.
And that's what's going on. Now, they tried to raise taxes, which they did successfully on people above 400,000. And don't think for a second they're not going after the middle class, which they are through inflation. And taxes did get raised on every single person because they changed the payroll tax thing again. But they'll have to raise taxes and they'll have to cut spending sooner or later. Now, what you're saying is...
Or just say, we can't pay you.
Yeah, and the thing, the we can't pay you is China. China owns $2 trillion. China owns our country. And so does Brazil and Japan.
So those countries own our debt.
That's right.
So at some point, we're going to either make some really, really angry people, banking
You know
system,
what?
the government, whoever.
This is too big for that. They're not going to be angry, but what they're doing is, and I could, this is purely my opinion now, and I'm okay with this. I'm all right with it. My opinion is they're saying, and I showed an image a few weeks ago about it, you know, where we're throwing gold over the net and the Chinese are throwing money towards us. I just believe they're collateralizing it. They're saying, listen, man, if we're going to keep buying your bonds in this debt, you got to give us the collateral.
No, what do you mean by that?
Meaning, give us your gold, give us your silver,
okay.
give us something real.
Yeah, something
I don't want the
real.
paper, I want the real stuff. You know, I got $2 trillion out there, I want some gold and silver. That's why when this price dropped in gold and silver, it was purely manipulated and not real. I'm telling you, I have the data. It's not real. I have data, real data, as you've seen on this show, and it gives you truth. Now, you make whatever you want out of the data, at least you're getting the data and not some skewed truth, because Satan uses half-truths. We're here to give you straight truth. So just keep in mind, for those that do have retirement accounts, if you want to make sure you're properly protected and preserved and be diversified away from the paper system, which I highly recommend, give us a call, register on the website there for free information. We'll send out a package. It's loaded with information that'll guide you into making decisions to be properly diversified into hard assets. And IRAs and 401ks and annuities and such are the ones in jeopardy because those are long term. And so you're storing something, your retirement's in a system long term, but long term with all the money printing and everything going on is in jeopardy. Not short term, long term. And I'm contending in the next 2 years, you're going to see fireworks, and this dollar is going to have significant challenges.
This Bank for International Settlements. This is you've actually have an image there that you just dropped. No, it's all right. Don't get it.
Okay.
But you had there's a physical building.
Oh, sure.
That it's like a central bank.
It's the central
banks.
bank of the central banks. So what's happened is this is the global government body of banks over the sovereign nation banks. telling them what to do.
So like over the Bank of Cyrus, Barbados,
Oh no,
Canada,
over the Bank of England, over
Yeah.
the Bank of the European Bank,
And even
European
over the
Central
Federal
Bank.
Reserve.
Absolutely, although I believe the Federal Reserve is probably part of creating that.
Oh, I would feel
America
certain.
is part of the system of this new order that's coming, I really believe.
So all of
it's-
those banks that are in nations
Yes.
that have setups just like the Federal Reserve has set up.
Right.
Bank of Canada, Bank of Barbados.
That's
I
right.
mentioned those because I've been in those countries.
That's right.
But they're set up just like the Federal Reserve. They are fractional banks.
Yes.
They are as much on the edge of collapse, most of them, as the.
Well, because they're printing money.
Right.
The whole world
They're
is printing
more
money right now. This is why this is, Charles, that's excellent, because this is why this is so important right now in history. We are printing money globally, not just the United States. Now remember, we print $85 billion every month that they keep saying they're going to stop doing. Well, number one, I don't believe that.
And they push it into the system.
Oh, they're giving it into the system.
They're loaning it out.
They're technically loaning it out. That's supposed to be loaned out to the people, but it's not. We went from a couple $100 billion that banks had in the Federal Reserve, like Kitty, as a backup. We have about $2 trillion sitting in the Federal Reserve from banks as deposit because they're getting paid a little interest on it. Wait till that $2 trillion hits the streets. You want to talk about hyperinflation. What I'm really trying to say is there's more paper money out there than there should be. And when you have a lot more of something, there's no more value. Stuff is valuable because there's not many of it. But when there's a lot of it, who wants it, right?
This would be like taking this as a $50, this is a fake $50 bill, but this would be like taking this and tearing off a piece of it and it turned into another $50 bill.
Right.
And tearing off another piece and it turned into another $50 bill.
Right.
I don't have anything to back it up.
Right.
I've just made more of them.
Yeah, and what's happening globally is they're making trillions and trillions of paper. But the problem is, we're still having economic problems because we have hundreds of trillions more in debt, fake debt. And so what happens is the Bank of International Settlements is trying to regulate the flow of money to the Federal Reserve and the central banks. Now, what does that mean? That means it's trickling down. So I'm going to show some images here that are going to help you visualize the control system of the world so you can see the hierarchy of the world. Now, this is just the hierarchy of the world. Now, this is not against any particular entity at all. You just need to understand why your retirement, your savings, your future, your quality of life is at stake if you're not properly diversified. And remember, God gave us dominion over the earth. Things of the earth, hard tangible assets are things of the earth, so we must be properly diversified in owning those with our retirement systems. I just particularly like silver because it is finite, and the mining industry says silver could be extinct by the year 2020, which is one day it's going to be extremely valuable, and it's something to hold because it's always been worth more than $1. And that's the good thing here. So let's go into, just to give you an idea of the system structure, okay? Now, this is the central bank of the central banks and how money flows. So let's go to image 4 and look at how this money flows through the system. Now, that is the central banking, shadow central banking system, by the way, because it's shadow because it's underneath the system that we understand. And if you notice the big yellow block, that's the Bank of International Settlements. And then below that, in the tan block, is the central banks of the world. Now, the capital flows between the central banks, Bank of International Settlements, and if you notice on the right, it's the deposits of the people in the small banks that flow through the system, and then the member banks. So it's all about the bankers being in a big party. This is a country club membership here. Now, if you notice on the left arrow how it flows into the Bank of International Settlements, this is the part that's key. Swaps, meaning in gold, currency, interest rates, and repos, which are just paper derivatives. Swaps are the danger because there's money being sold, interest rate swaps, gold swaps, meaning I've got 100 tons of gold, I put it in with the central bank, they then lend it out, and it's all being lent and swapped and lent on top of each other. So currency, interest rates, gold are being borrowed and lent numerous times on the same value. And that goes back to Charles's fractional banking. So it's not one for one. It's not I have 1 ounce for this, $1 for this. It's not. It's I got an ounce of gold, but I lend it out to 100 people. And then it flows outward, if you notice to the right, sovereign funds. and then flows back in and back around. So you could take that off.
Sovereign funds? What's
Sovereign funds would be you could take the image off. Sovereign nations are like big conglomerates from Russia, let's say, or the Middle East has tremendous sovereign wealth funds where they'll have, you know who had a great sovereign wealth fund? Libya. Countries like that. What they did is they had billions and billions of dollars. Now, Iran has it too. These sovereign funds are a shadow banking organization of hedge fund money. And they always try to make it sound like it's Wall Street hedge fund money. It's just not. This stuff comes from overseas. Libya was using their sovereign wealth going through our commercial banks to trade crude oil to the level it went to. And there's all sorts of evidence that backs that up, which forced our economy into recession. We believe the next war that comes is not going to be a bomb war. Those bomb wars are distractions away from what's really going on in the shadow system, which is the financial war. They're using those billions of dollars in the shadow system to regulate, or not regulate, but take down their enemies.
So those sovereign nations have actually tangible money that they're putting in the banking system, and then they're getting this fractional investments back from it that's so huge because it's being lent out.
And here's the danger. There's right there now. Here's the danger of it, though. The fractional element of it. China does big time. Russia does big time. A lot of people, this is so dangerous, and here's why. They have so many trillions and trillions of these derivative fractional shadows investments. If they just sold them at one time into the market, the whole entire system collapses. We as America cease to exist. And your retirement system's gone, wiped out in a blink of an eye.
And it's because they're taking something that's tangible, putting it in a system, and being able to take it on paper and loan it time after time after time again out.
Yes.
And they're using it to buy stuff with.
Yes.
We're using it to buy stuff with. Our banking system's allowing us to do that.
Yes.
Now, you're saying this central bank of central banks is a place that has been formed as an actual building, an actual organization that is starting to tie all of this banking system worldwide together.
Yes, and we as a Christian body, we know what this means. The central bank of the central banks is tying the world system together under regulation. United Nations, Central Bank of Central Banks, IMF. I'm telling you, the world system is coming into an order. We know what this means. Now, we can be prepared. If you're in the systems of the world in paper, then it's going to be your choice in the end. I'm saying be diversified, but you better have a chunk of diversified of your portfolio, your IRA money, because that's where most people have their savings, in a hard, tangible asset, something the world system is not in control over. Because remember, we, the body of Christ, should not be controlled by Satan's system, which means why are we in the paper system? That's his. God gave us dominion of the earth, so we should be in things of the earth. So for those that do have IRAs and you want to look into hard asset transfers, you can roll over simply into a precious metals IRA, and we'll go ahead and send free information to you. Just register on the website or give us a call, and we'll go ahead and get that out to you so you can be better educated to provide a service. Listen, it's not about coming to Cornerstone for silver or anything like that. Go anywhere. Just get the hard asset. This is very important. We're just merely here to try to help educate the body of Christ, because as we become financially able, we can still maintain security for the believing system, the faithful system, so our families can stay protected, our children can stay protected, and God can stay center, that we're not controlled by Satan's world.
Terry, we've probably talked about this in the past, but you know, when the famine hit Egypt and Joseph was placed in charge before the famine came, Egypt owned everything because they had food.
That's right.
Which was something that it was an earth product. It was something that came from the earth. That's what God gave us dominion over.
And matter of fact, that food, this is good, because that food, and a lot of people say, well, how am I going to own food? You know, stick a bushel of corn in my garage? But silver is so real, since Moses, you use the silver in the future if you had to Exchange for food.
And that's what they ultimately did. They first started trading what they had as far as
They
silver
traded
and
their
gold.
cattle for food and things
they-
like that. Yeah.
And then they ended up trading their land.
Yes.
And the only thing that they were allowed to trade, they weren't doing IOUs. I'll give you an IOU
That's
for some
right.
food.
That's right.
They were trading tangible things for the food.
And that's what we're trying to say here in the wealth transfer is have tangible things. The reason we like silver is it's liquid. You own it. You can store it in the vault. You don't have to even keep it in your house. You can store it in a vault. You register online like banking and stuff. It's really pretty interesting how easy it is to do. And we can at least give you information and guide you towards that. Now, I want to show you this. If you don't think what I'm saying is real on that shadow banking, central banking system, here's an image in image 5 that shows the countries of Europe that are in trouble. Look at this image. Now, those are projections in the red of their debt to GDP, meaning how much they produce. They're not only getting better, they're projected to go infinitely into debt. You're talking, if you notice the line on the right, hundreds of %. It's unsustainable. That is an image of a rubber band snapping. All those countries are projected to be basically broke. Something has to give. You could take that image off. And now what's important about that is that the debt system is going to snap one day. And when it does, your retirement system is going to get caught up in it. And the central bank of central banks is going to try to regulate the fallout, is why this is important to understand. Now look at image 6. This is a pyramid of global liquidity, meaning how the money flow system is. And this is why this is so scary. The top part, you notice the pyramid's upside down. The top derivatives, paper, fake. 82% of the world's gross domestic product is fake in derivatives. 75% of the liquid world is in fake stuff. Below that, securitized debt, meaning your land, meaning a bond that's already fake, is put up for security, and that's the next. And then you got broad money, which is actually paper money in the bank, and then you got power money, which would be things like silver and gold. Look how small that is. So you can see, you can take that image off, you can see how the power money, gold and silver, is the smallest portion. So I'm telling you, not many people are really protecting themselves with a proper hard asset. That would be power money as the proper hard asset. You notice that's on the bottom of the rung? When that thing collapses, it's going to collapse. Only those that have hard tangible assets will have something to not only survive on, but pass down to an inheritance to his children's children. Now, this one is going to be an eye-opener. Literally, go to image 7. This is the world system. No condemnation, the world system. What that means is on the bottom, the people, the planets, and all living things are on the bottom. That's where we are, folks. Above that are our governments. Above that, the corporations. Above that, commercial banks. Above that, central banks. Above that, the world body of government banks. Above that, the Bank of International Settlements. The financial elite sit at the top. They dominate and control on the left side through military power, but the wealth and resources is there in the middle. So take that off, but I'm telling you, that is the structure of the world. I'm really saying we the people are on the bottom. Get protected, and know next week we're going to talk about statistics for the American worker. You've got to see this if you don't think things aren't right. And if you haven't made Jesus Christ the center of your life, ask him into your heart. Your eyes will be opened and truth will come in. God bless you tonight.
Make sure that you tell somebody about the wealth transfer. We're going to be back this same time next week on this same station. Again, tell somebody and we'll see you right here for the wealth transfer.